run trials with lots of different kinds of data, from neuroscience data, psychophysiological data, self-report data, observational data, healthcare data, etc., that they can improve one's personal health and well-being. And there's a lot of research, by the way, already in adulthood showing that being compassionate and having gratitude increases your well-being and decreases your risk for things like heart disease and cancer. Okay? We can see how it enhances the connection to others. Lots of data on that already, but very little, almost nothing in education of children. We can see how it enhances the well-being of others. And when you are compassionate to someone, doesn't it enhance their own well-being? And lastly, we can look at the quality of the natural physical environment. These are all areas or domains in which we should be doing, just like President Gold said, good randomized trials to find out where the science leads us to tell us how to do these things better. So what are the contexts that support kindness and compassion? Well, here we are at the center. Early childhood secure attachments to parents and caregivers. We know children that are secure in their attachments are more likely to be caring even in the early years to other children. What children see adults do and why. Of course, that's a problem right now in our political context in America on both sides. Okay? I'm taking a side here just to say that we have political divisiveness, and if you're very interested in this issue, you might look at the Dignity Index. If you don't know about this, Google the Dignity Index. How can we have more dignity in our political structure, even if we don't agree? What values are promoted? What's the worldview we're giving? Remember the dominant ideologies? What's the worldview we're giving at home, at school, and communities and businesses about the nature of kindness and compassion? And what skills can children learn and have the opportunity to practice? Okay? So these are things I think about. And the question is, how do we promote caring and compassion? So let's break it down. What does it mean to be caring and compassionate? If I had more time, we'd have charts and we'd be writing it all down. But I'll sort of give you my short. It's being attentive and aware of other people and of yourself. It's being sensitive to others' needs and states. It's being open-minded. Curiosity is a very important. Open-mindedness. Thinking you don't know all the answers yet is the first step. Listening without judgment, or what we call deep listening, which Chime is, for example, doing in their work with teacher well-being. Recognizing our common humanity. This is a central component of this. We're all in this together. No one gets out alive, right? And acting from a ground of ethics, which in many places would say, in religious institutions, is doing no harm to others. Okay? In what ways can we promote these skills in schools, in families, and in students? That's the fundamental question that all of us should be asking. We're not just interested in children's academic achievement. It's a great thing, it's important policy, but we know that children who are caring and have good social emotional skills improve in their academic achievement. It doesn't go the other way around, by the way. Academic achievement doesn't lead people to be more caring and compassionate. Emotion regulation precedes executive function. You know that now. So the ability to regulate our emotions, both for ourselves and in the service of others, is that what keeps you healthy? Is that what life is about? It's about our closest relationships, right? And don't we have problems in all of our closest relationships? Is there anybody here who doesn't? Okay. So we're all working on this. There was a quote once that said, only the naive or believe that they don't have problems. Okay? Because we all do. We all are suffering in certain ways. So it begins with parenting. And so I'm really excited about the work here at the center, and we're going to talk about a little bit of that later. My teacher was Mary Ainsworth. I'm trained in the attachment tradition. That's, of course, how I met Piaget, and I knew John Bowlby. And this work is terribly important because we know now that behavior and emotion regulation across development occurs. Secure attachments create greater probabilities of people being interpersonally attuned, having better self-regulation, and having resilience as they grow. And what happens is, of course, mutual regulation by our caregivers, our teachers, our parents, our grandparents, helps us to self-regulate. But we're never entirely self-regulated. We know that we're regulated by our relationships, right? You know that when your partner is in a good space, you become in a good space. And when they're in a bad space, then you get deregulated, right? It's not just a problem of childhood. This is a problem across development. And so this issue of how we mutually regulate each other, especially how we mutually regulate children so they develop their own ability. Because emotion regulation is the keys to the kingdom. Children who can regulate their emotions well don't have a lot of problems in life. Not nearly like children who don't regulate, right? That have poor executive function, that are impulsive, that are reactive, that are easily hurt, that respond with aggression or depression when things are bad. So I think about a model I call the pro-social family. We're interested in this in the end. We're interested in children's social, emotional, and academic outcomes. And we go to school and community contextual factors, poverty, culture, all of those are affecting this. And that comes from a healthy family climate. We know this. There's hundreds of research studies showing this. And that relates to healthy parent management, healthy parent-child relationships, and modeling compassion and caring and respect in your family. But who's doing all that work? Well, parents. And many parents didn't get this when they were children. So what are the interventions we need to help build these processes that lead to these outcomes? Right? Think about this whole process of what the science of this should be. Similarly, schooling. I spent most of my career on education and doing randomized trials and working in schools of various kinds. And so I've been very interested in education. And I think about this as public health work. I think we're all public health workers. You can call yourself an educator or a psychologist or a social worker, but we're really all just doing the work of public health. And we have these undesired and highly related outcomes that are very correlated, which is poor school achievement, poor mental health, aggression and violence, and substance use and abuse. Okay? We know these are related. They have developmental pathways that have been well explained by lots of epidemiological studies over time. And I'd say we have three underlying central constraints. As if we improve these, we're bound to reduce these. And those, as you would guess, are impulsive action, right? Because don't you do many things that you regret if you had just slowed down a little bit before you responded to your spouse, right? And just taken a deep breath or two, or walked away when you have a fight with your teenager. I can remember many of those in my family. Emotional dysregulation, the ability to regulate ourselves well, and our quality of our relationship, or how secure or insecure we feel. Because if we feel insecure, we're always looking for someone who's going to hurt us, right? If we feel secure in our relationship, we trust people more. And of course, that trust engenders trust. So these are, to me, and most of my career has been working on trying to change these three, what I call underlying shared constraints that are related to all the outcomes that I want to change. And as Sue said, I'm one of the founders of CASEL. And CASEL is a model of this, of what are the skills that we want to teach. There are skills in the red, which are what we call intrapersonal skills of self-awareness and self-management. There are blue skills that we call interpersonal skills of how to negotiate and manage conflict, how to be compassionate and caring to others. And there are these cognitive skills, the ability to do good social problem solving, to make good decisions, and do them with a basis of ethics. And so much of the work in this field is around that, and we can think about what we can do in curriculum and instruction in schools. We can think about school-wide practices or policies that support these skills. And we can think about family and community partnerships that support all this development. And we can think, I could draw another circle again of the mesosystem of the ideological and dominant ideologies around this. So for example, think about how much money is allocated in Nebraska for education. How much of it is allocated for children's social and emotional well-being? Tiny percent at this point. But it's something. And we need to work to show the science of this to build those capabilities. So I've been involved for 44 years. I was only 9 years old when I started. Doing randomized trials of a curriculum I developed originally for profoundly deaf children in sign language, the PASS curriculum. And we talked about what we call living the golden rule, treating others the way you want to be treated. That's the fundamental underlying characteristic. Now, how do you learn to treat people that way, treat others the way you want to be treated? Well, there are all kinds of mini and macro developmental skills in different stages of development that we can teach kids. We can teach them awareness of emotional states. We can put feelings into words, and we know when we put feelings into words, aspects of our actions. The ability to calm down when you're feeling highly emotionally aroused. How many who are parents here who have had problems calming down when you've been emotionally aroused by your teenager? We're all subject to it, right? Okay. Planning ahead and considering the effects of your behavior on not only yourself over time, but on others. What are the consequences? And then making good plans. This is what we do. It's what we've been doing for many years in many schools all around the world. And as part of that, as I've grown myself, I keep thinking more about how we develop empathy and compassion for others. So in PATH, we've done components, skill building for teachers and for students, not just for the students, for the teachers, because in their pre-service training, they have none of this. They walk into the classroom having no idea what it's really going to be like. And that's very explicit materials and time for skills development, technical support, giving teachers training and coaching, and seeing other teachers do it well is very important. Generalization, creating lots of opportunities to use these skills all day long, not just in a specific program time. Providing students feedback and recognition for their performance. Integrating it to other academic subjects. This is a tall order to do as well. And involving parents. All of these things are part of what has to happen in order for us to have the kind of outcomes that build these social emotional skills that lead children to be competitive and cooperative, caring and compassionate, and have high achievement. We've done 15 randomized trials. There have been 15 randomized trials done on PATH, and they've been done in Pakistan, and Uruguay, and Switzerland, and 4 cities in the United States, rural areas, urban areas, the outback of Australia, all kinds of China, Beijing. And what we find is that when you do this work well, we see these following changes. We see increased attention and engagement in the classroom. That's the most important one for teachers. Trying to recruit the attention of 25 kids at once, well, just go and try to teach for a while and you'll see. Improve peer relations using sociometric measures mostly. Improvements in their cognitive abilities. When you help children to regulate their emotions, you can recruit more of their cognitive ability. You know, when you're anxious yourself, you don't perform well, right? So if children can learn how to regulate their emotions, especially before an achievement test, they can say to themselves, okay, I actually know this stuff, and I can take a couple deep breaths and think about what I know. That actually improves their performance. And so we see that, and there's been a meta-analysis now of studies that include over 500,000 children in 54 countries, 254 randomized trials, showing that social emotional learning not only improves children's behavior, but it improves their academic achievement. And I have a study in New Haven that showed, for example, that children who, in a randomized trial, the schools where the children got the intervention versus didn't, improved on their state test scores. Okay? We see lower rates of maladaptive outcomes, and we see cost savings. If you estimate that the effects of these changes in behavior for lower context of treatment and aggression and violence and academic achievement outcomes that predict graduation and paying taxes and buying a home, etc., you see an estimate of $22 saved for every dollar that's spent. Okay? Now the problem is, schools are focused on having to pay for this, but the savings are not to schools, right? It's to society. So how do we create a caring school? Principals ask me this all the time, superintendents. Well, I think both children and adults need good emotional regulation skills. That's the first thing. If you don't have that, nothing else really works. And they need healthy norms and a safe environment. Children need to feel safe, that they're seen and respected and they belong. Schools need to adopt practices that create shared communities of caring. They have to spend time together doing things that actually are the practices of being caring and compassionate, not just talking about it. And this can include high-quality SEL programs, expressing caring and gratitude in lots of different ways. We help schools do this, building belonging, and I think for adults, mindfulness skills, as you'll see in the great work of Chime and others. For kids, I don't know. Mindfulness skills, to me, are not the goal here. The goal is building healthy peer relations, having friends. What's important to kids? I always say 2 things. Having friends, and your parents aren't called to do this. Right? And if you have those 2 things, if you have friends and you're not getting in trouble, childhood's pretty darn good. Right? right? And so really building those skills, building these interpersonal skills so children learn how to be a good winner and be a good loser, and how to respond when they're teased so they don't get teased more, and why teasing itself is a bad thing, and all those aspects of, remember childhood? Remember what it was like? Okay, but this requires principal leadership. And we spend a lot of time blaming teachers for them not doing this work well, when I think the primary and critical change point is principal leadership. And there is not a principal certification program in the United States that prepares principals to become social, emotional leaders of their buildings. It's all about instructional practice. Okay? And I would say, if you don't have a great building that's full of caring people, led by a caring person, you're not going to get that kind of academic achievement. And we know this for good reasons. I just told you about almost 300 randomized trials that show that when you teach these skills to children, they improve in their academics because they become more bonded to teachers, they are more motivated to work for you, they learn more. This seems like common sense. Why do we have so much research to do this, right? The golden rule is everywhere. It's in every religion and natural context in the world. And that's why we talk about, in fact, in our own work in 3rd grade, we teach the golden rule over and over and over again, until children really understand what it means to treat others the way you want to be treated. That's the development of empathy, and hopefully leads to compassion. So that leads me to mindfulness. You've all heard about mindfulness. Some of you have gone to mindfulness practices. Maybe you liked them or didn't like them. But it's paying attention in a particular way in the present moment with as little judgment as you can have. We're all judging all the time, so you can't be non-judgmental. No one is non-judgmental, right? It's a goal you want to attain. But as John Kabat-Zinn, the major purveyor in the United States, says, mindfulness in everyday life is the ultimate challenge. You can sit and do a meditation practice or one kind or another, but that's got nothing to do with actually if you're mindful in your relationship with others. Okay? Lots of people I know have gone to mindfulness retreats or meditation retreats or Christian meditation retreats, all different kinds, different religions. Almost all religions have some kind of mindful meditation in their practices. And then the next day they're mean to everybody, right? So sitting on a pillow doesn't ensure anything. And there are lots of people that are loving, caring, compassionate people that have never done anything like mindfulness. Although they may have done a lot of prayer. And prayer is very important. But mindfulness is an inherent mental capacity, and we can strengthen it. And we know when we strengthen it in adults, it improves their well-being and it improves their health. In children, I don't think it was very good data, actually, to tell you the truth. Okay? But what we're interested in is interpersonal mindfulness. That is what teachers and parents, what are the qualities we want to build in teachers and parents that we think will really make a difference. And you can see them listening with full attention to children and colleagues. And these days, since we all have our phones out, what's it called, phubbing? People are studying phubbing research, which is the problem of parents on their phones all the time when they're with their kids, rather than being with their kids. So that ability to listen with full attention is a critical skill. You know when people really listen to you, it makes a real difference in your relationship. Not when they're sort of listening. Presence and awareness of your emotions, of course, and the emotions of others. Being as open and non-judgmental as you can to children's thoughts and feelings. And as a parent at one time of teenagers, I was really bad at that because I already knew what they were going to say, and I already knew what I was going to say, and that's bad. Self-regulation in your teaching and parenting, so you're low in reactivity and you're low in automaticity. Awareness and responsive to children's individual needs. It's these teachable moments, and you learn this in education to have withedness and to be ready for those moments. As a parent with a teenager, it's when you're driving in the car, and all of a sudden they say something to you. It's at the unexpected moments, and it's never when you're face to face with teenagers, hardly ever. If you're face to face with them, they feel challenged and don't want to tell you anything, or they want to start a fight with you, or you want to start a fight with them. But it's those moments that we have to recognize, which are those teachable moments in our relationships. And lastly, you have to have compassion for yourself, because all these things are impossible to do well. We all make errors all the time, right? We don't listen well to people. We're not aware of our own emotions or others, and we do the wrong things. We often are not open and curious. We already think we already know what people are going to do. We have these expectations about them, so expectations work themselves out. We often are not very self-regulated. We're often not aware of these teachable moments, and we often think that we're lousy parents, or we're lousy teachers because we don't do all these things well. Well, these are things you set intentions to do, but of course, we're all on the path to getting better at these things, I hope. And to do that, we need to build nurturing environments. It's the whole thing, put your mask on first. And that's what we believe. We believe that working with teachers and leaders is the way to make these things happen for children and families. And so we focus on caregivers. We've done work with families, and especially with schools. And we think it's essential for having these kinds of outcomes we all want. I won't go through this. You know, stress and well-being of teachers is a big problem. And similarly, pro-social family, we have a pro-social classroom. Same thing in a way, right? You want students that have good emotional and academic outcomes, and they feel challenged and are successful. Healthy classroom climates, we know, predict those outcomes well. And healthy classroom climates related to teachers that develop caring relationships where children are seen and feel they belong. Teachers who have good management skills, and teachers who implement an SEL program effectively. But who's doing all this? The overworked, completely stressed, underpaid teachers, okay? So, while we can buy as many curriculum boxes of curriculums of SEL or any other intervention that we want, unless we support teachers' own development, we're likely not to get there. And in most professions, what people will tell you, like lawyers and doctors, that it took them 15 years to figure out what they were really doing. Now, if you talk to teachers who are experienced, I have a cousin who was a teacher for 30 years. He said it wasn't until my 17th year that I thought he was a decent teacher. By then, I really understood what it really meant to work with students in a way that really made them belong and be motivated to really learn instead of me just telling them what to do. Right? This is hard, and it's a process over time. And since we have such a dropout rate of teachers going on, it creates chaos in schools where you have very few master teachers that really have these capacities to be models for other teachers in doing this. And so we've been involved for almost 20 years in doing work on teacher well-being. It's very similar to the Chime work that Holly will talk about in a few minutes. Our goal is to increase teachers' well-being, their mindfulness, their positive affect, their enjoyment of teaching, and to decrease their burnout and depression, anxiety symptoms. We've done lots of trials. Usually a 3-day model, 2 days at the start of the school year, 1 day later with lots of communication in between. We've done trials in Croatia, in New York City, in the Bronx, and in rural and urban Pennsylvania. And it involves 3 areas. One is teaching them some mindfulness practices. The ones the teachers use most is just taking 3 deep breaths because they can't go to the bathroom during the day and they're upset. They're upset by what's going on in themselves and their kids. Really helping them become aware of their emotions, how anxiety and fear and sadness and anger arise in the classroom, how it's related to their own development, how it's related to the stereotypes and biases they have. It might be how someone looks, or their last name, or the fact that they had their brother or sister, and so they already have an expectation about them, a bias. And then lastly, teaching them skills around empathy and compassion, both for themselves and others. And the most important skill is teaching them to be mindful listeners. And that means to listen, only to listen, not to respond. Really, it's so hard to teach this. We spend a lot of time and care just helping teachers learn how to listen. We call it listening with the heart. Because usually when we're listening, it's because we want to then connect it to something else in the conversation. We want to say, oh yeah, I had that experience too. It's not really listening. Okay? So teaching teachers how to listen to each other and to their students is, I think, the most active ingredient in this work. And we've done multiple studies, as I said, and in all these studies we see teachers have lower stress, they enjoy teaching more, they have less sense of time urgency, that they're rushed during the day, even though we've changed nothing in their schedule. No changes has nothing to do with the curriculum or the day. It's all done in trainings outside the school day. They have lower rates of depression and anxiety, greater compassion for themselves and others, lower rates of physical symptoms of stress. In one study we found changes in diurnal waking cortisol, and systolic and diastolic blood pressure as a result. These are randomized trials. And improve quality of teaching. We've actually sent blind observers in the schools. In this case, it was 225 classrooms in the Bronx, and teachers were randomized, and those teachers that were in the intervention schools improved in their pedagogy. Even though we did nothing about pedagogy, we did nothing about instruction. Why? The teachers teach better on days when they feel good, when they're taking care of themselves. Of course they do, just like all of us, right? We perform better when we're calm and we're ready. We followed teachers up over a year in New York City. We found that there are continued benefits of lower psychological stress, higher mindfulness, and better emotion regulation a year later. We looked at 5,200 children in New York City schools and randomized in those classes. We found that children have greater motivation, greater engagement in the classroom, which is what teachers need, right? We want kids to be engaged, not disengaged, right? That's when behavior problems start. And higher reading competence, at least by teacher report, over the next year. So, a holistic picture of this is we need effective conditions for learning, norms of caring, we need teacher well-being and awareness, and we need good social emotional skill development. We have to have these things work together. We have to think about systemic change, right? Not just one component of what it's like. And of course, there's a part of this that involves parents and teachers' connections too, but not in that drawing. How am I doing, Sue? Am I about ready again? Okay. Okay. So I'll just say that you can go on the web and put in the tree of contemplative practices, and you'll find this beautiful tree. And that's to say there are many, many ways to be mindful. Stillness practices like silence or centering prayer in the Catholic tradition, or quieting the mind. There are movement practices like Sufi dancing and martial arts. I learned Tai Chi over the Zoom during COVID. There are creation practices like singing and chanting and mandala work. There are things like the Jesus prayer and celebrating the Sabbath. I do mindful dishwashing in my family. I don't have a dishwasher in my house. Well, actually, I have one that's broken and we haven't fixed it for 12 years. Because I actually like the process of mindfully washing the dishes because it's one thing that I accomplish each day, other than putting on my clothes. So you can look at this and spend time on it. We can spend hours on all these different practices and different ways that different people find that stills their mind, makes them present, builds the sense of caring and compassion in themselves and others. And I'll just say the best way to find yourself is by losing yourself in the service of others. This is what Gandhi said. And I think that's one thing we found in schools that we're not doing much of, which is helping children to be in the service of others. We're sending them to school, we're telling them what to do, we're telling them what to learn, and sending them home. Right? Is that what we want? Is that the society we're trying to build? So there's some challenges. Can we understand with greater clarity the developmental course of empathy and compassion in different cultural settings? Because we know, for example, in indigenous cultures, these are built into the cultures. The stories that were used all the time. What combination of skills are necessary for pro-social behavior and motivation to be compassionate? And how do we nurture it? How do pro-social behaviors develop that are motivated by true compassion rather than by rewards? This could be just an external reward process for children. And what kinds of service learning experiences can best nurture a compassionate perspective? Can we prepare? Can we prepare experiences that lead to softening of these in-group and out-group processes? And you know they happen in school. You know all the bullying that goes on in school. Who wasn't bullied here? Is there anybody that wasn't bullied and teased at one time or other because who they were, how they looked, who their sister was, etc.? Okay. So how do we stop this? How do we soften these in-group and out-group processes? This is a really critical part of this. Can we increase our own capacity to care for others with an attitude of gratitude for just the opportunity to serve others? And lastly, can we nurture greater appreciation for the interdependence of all beings and thus develop an understanding and caring for our natural environment? This is really, I think this is the challenge of our time, is how do we adapt. And we're going to have to adapt because global warming is not going to slow down very much. How are we going to adapt? We're going to have hundreds of millions of people immigrating because of just climate change. Right? We're seeing it already, of course, in many places in the world. And we're going to see more of it. And so I want to return just for a minute to these global challenges. We've got to keep these global challenges in mind. We have enormous challenges in our world. These being, we could set up charts and we go through a lot more, but I think these are 4 really critical challenges. And we need to think, how do we raise children? How do we support families? How do we train teachers? How do we support teachers? How do we build buildings of caring and compassion across our society to deal with what we see as a pretty challenging future? And so with that, thank you. If you want to know more about our work with teachers, come here. And I said to Sue, I didn't want to give a talk without having the center show its beautiful skills and the great work they've done. And so we have 3 short presentations. So are you going to do this? Oh, okay. So we have Amanda, Holly,